Black economics, from my perspective and what I talk about with my podcast, what I have talked about in my first season at least, was all about the responsibility of business owners and the responsibility of us as Black consumers, and how us all together shifting our mindset and what we think and feel and do as it relates to how we spend our money is Black economics.
Okay.
Do we include other ethnic groups in Black economics to buy amongst ourselves, but to encourage others to buy amongst us also?
Oh, definitely. Because if you think of, think of Chinatown, anywhere you go, everybody goes to Chinatown. But Chinatown is always Chinatown itself. It's always Chinese culture or Asian world culture, always their food, their music. You see Buddha at the front door, their culture is what they're monetizing. But as it relates to Black economics, of course, we want anybody can shop with us. Everybody's money is green. But it's, as far as Black people go, when you go to Chinatown, Chinese people or Asian people are there supporting their culture and their thing too.
First, they probably stop at Chinatown.
I feel like when you look at Chinatown, they're really doing it for themselves. It's just that everybody else can come in and experience it too. And so if we want to ever have a little Wakanda or, little Africa, like it got little Italy or anywhere like that, little Koreatown or whatever, if we want to do that, then that requires Black consumers to find value in what Black culture has to give. And that is it's literally, we have to make it our business to support our stuff.
Welcome, and thanks for joining Mahogany Under with Cece and Dr. Yancey. Today we have Dre that's going to talk to us about Black economics. Hello, Dre.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
How are you?
All is well in my world. All is well.
Tell our audience about yourself.
All right. Well, I'm a Virginia native living here in Las Vegas. I have a podcast called Tea and Tonic Podcast, where I talk about everything that is blessed, broken, and beautiful about the Black experience. And my conversations are always geared towards empowering us. So I talk about the dirty, the ugly stuff, but I also talk about how amazing we are, and I put us in a place of what next versus just kind of dumping on our negative stuff. So we got to look at it, assess it, and then create our shifts. So that's what my podcast is about. I'm also part owner of Juneteenth 365, which is a cultural events group, and our big event is a Juneteenth festival here in Las Vegas, where we encourage Black folks from all over to come and celebrate our freedom, our official, Independence Day, or our official Freedom Day, and what better place than Vegas? So that's the other thing that I do, Juneteenth 365.
All right. I can't wait to see the Juneteenth 365.
It's pretty awesome. It's going to be great. It's like no tooting of my horn, but my team, my squad, toot.
It's okay to toot yourself. If you don't,
definitely.
Today you're going to talk to us about Black economics, and I'm actually going to be here just taking notes and letting you have the stage.
Score. When we think of Black economics, I always think of responsibility. As the melanated people of the world, or as we can say, descendants of enslaved people. Of course, we know plenty of us as melanated people in America consider ourselves Native. But, when we have to look at the umbrella and how the world sees us, everybody think that we all come from the same, thing. But when I'm talking about Black economics, I'm talking about people that are the indigenous melanated people of the world, specifically here in America, because our journey has not given us a easy road. You know, it's kind of like they say that other people have a 400-year head start on us, that we were here. We have been, our ancestors in one way or another have been enslaved people. We have issues in our family that has been created due to the prison industrial industry, preschool to prison pipeline, redlining, unemployment. It's just, the cards have been stacked against us for a long time. And so when we think of how did we get into this space, I always like to reference the era in American history called Reconstruction. And so Reconstruction happened right after the Civil War. So this was the time where the Confederates lost, period. Okay, they lost. And because of them losing this war, it required, of course, that the main thing they were fighting over was the power to enslave other human beings was taken away from them. And so when that happened, Black people, our ancestors, when they say pull yourself up by your bootstraps, they did that. And they created communities when they were shunned and rejected and faced with so much violence and anger and hatred. They found their own spaces and they had their own everything. I'm sure by now a lot of us have heard about Tulsa, Oklahoma. We've heard about Black Wall Street. And in my mind, Black Wall Street was the equivalent of our Chinatown or Koreatown, Little Italy nowadays. It just was happening back then. And so in these areas, we had our own banks, hospitals, schools. If we needed something done, we did it ourselves because we only had ourselves to depend upon. A lot of times we think of this history as so far gone, but it's like Jim Crow ended in 1965. So my dad was 5 when that happened, you know, so it's not like it was, you know, so far gone that our people were really working together because they really, really had to. And so in this time of Reconstruction, there was a election that was about to happen. This is really funny that this whole conversation is coming up now with the whole election stuff going on, right? So this election was going to happen, and this guy, Rutherford B. Hayes, was running for president. Now, he was the president that was going to be coming after Abraham Lincoln, who had done the Emancipation Proclamation that year, and then later on was assassinated. So his vice president kind of sucked. He sucked, and he really didn't have any, you know, he didn't have any kahunas, you know? And so people were kind of just stepping all over him. He was really confused, and it was just terrible. And so here comes Rutherford B. Hayes, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to run for president and I want to win. So he hits up the people in the South, in the Confederacy, and he talks to them like, hey, if you get me this election, basically, if you make it so that I'm the president, I will take the Union troops out of the South. So the thing about this is the fact that we talk about who's cheating and not cheating now in American history. If we look all the way back then, it was the same stuff. So there's nothing really new about this, like underhanded things that may or may not happen, you know? So what'd you say?
I said it's what built America.
Exactly. And so long story short, he wins. Guess this though, and I talk about this when I do this episode. Anyway, this guy won because they had to do a recount, and he had to do a recount in a specific state. Can you guys guess which state it was?
Florida or Georgia?
It was Florida. It was Florida. I mean, if we think back at like every major like election that's been, who's gonna win or who has to do a recount, it's always Florida. Florida. So anyway, he got this recount or whatever happened. He became the president. He took the Union troops out of the South. And because of that, he basically, I say he unleashed the Klansmen to do what they wanted to do. You know, he said, hey, I was going to take them out of the South, and he did just that. And when he did that, all of that hate and anger and that stuff that we don't know what the dark part of the universe it comes from, it came out. And that was when things like burning down Tulsa happened. That was the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. And the Klan in those times specifically targeted Black business owners because economics is power at the end of the day. So we're always perceived or seen as impoverished people, poor people, always at the bottom, this and that. But I was actually listening to The Roots has a new album out, and the guy said, we didn't know we were poor until they told us so, type of thing, you know. But if we look at the comparison of how the average Black family lives versus the average white family, there's a pretty big difference as far as resources and things like that. So to bring this around to economics is to say that in a time we were maybe even afraid, you know, everything it was taking from us, our entrepreneurial people to look at and say, hey, this is my uncle or my great cousin, or this is my great great grandfather. This is the store that's been in our family since for however long. Most of us can't say that, you know, that's just literally not our story to be able to see entrepreneurship or to see businesses really thriving in our community that belong to us. It's a very important thing to think of who we allow in our spaces. My mom, a lot of times she'll say, oh, well, they need to put something over here. They do a lot of stuff in northern, well, I'm from Suffolk, for those that are listening, Suffolk, Virginia. It's say, you know, in North Suffolk, it's all of this stuff. They got this and they've got that over there, but they need to put some of that stuff down here in downtown. And I have to tell her every time she says it, it's not for them to do. It's for us to do. We have a responsibility to ourselves to say, hey, we have to, this is an opportunity for us to create. There are 2.6 million Black owned businesses in America, I think in 2020, 2.6 million. And a lot of them are online. A lot of them are sporadically placed here or there. You know, I think we're all kind of on this journey of understanding the importance of economics. But I think that and supporting each other economically, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, every time I go to a pop-up shop, I'm like smiling and seeing all of the melanated business owners there and seeing all of the melanated hands passing their green dollars to another melanated hand. Those type of things, we have to know that it's important. And I'm gonna tell you why it's important. Maybe that's the next step, right? So the reason this is important is in America, if we look at unemployment, of course, pre-COVID, like before, you know, stuff hit the fan, right? If we were looking at unemployment from a basis of, you know, of race, Black people are the most unemployed or have been the most unemployed for some time. So, and for whatever reason, it could be for the lack of education. Because if we think about redlining and we think of the funds that go to schools, our schools, if we're in quote unquote impoverished areas, they don't get the same benefits as those areas that have more money in their property value. Side note of that,
we need to take the census because that helps us get resources.
Right. If we know, I mean, I kind of struggle with that because I'm like, hey, y'all don't know that the hood is over here. Y'all can't look over here and see that this is the hood. So I feel the census thing. I agree that we need to be counted and people need to know that we exist. But I think that's a good reason to say we need to do the census. But I also know that in America, the property value determines our schools. So if we've already strategically been redlined into specific areas, we've already strategically been put there and given minimal opportunity or not the same level of financial input from the city, which we all pay the taxes to. Like if I'm in whatever, I pay the taxes, you know, but because their property value is more than mine, you know, they get a better school than I do. So yes, we need the census. We need people to be counted and to know that you exist and that you're there. And we do need the resources. But I don't like to put it like, oh, that's why we need to make sure we fill out the census so they'll help us. Like they know what the hood is over here. They know this spot needs some extra stuff, you know. So, where was I?
Oh, about getting resources or
schools, resources, all these. Oh, why we have to make sure that we do it. It's our job to do it. So what I was saying is if I have a business or me and 3 family members, we have this thing that we do and we're good at it, or we can monetize some part of our culture. Like if we had dance classes, like nobody dances like us. If you think about all these groups of people, oh, we're doing a hip hop dance. And it's like, is it really hip hop? It looks kind of hip hop-ish. But, you know, we have to find those things within ourselves. I think we've lost that. We've kind of lost that zeal. And I understand. We've lost that because we've gone through the crack epidemic. You know, we've gone through, like I said, prison industrial industry. We've gone through recession after recession. So it's kind of hard when you're just trying to put food on your table. And your dad might not be there because he's in jail for also trying to put food on the table. He just couldn't get a job, so he had to sell a little bit of weed on the side. These are the things, you know. Mm-hmm. And so when we legitimize ourselves, I mean, if we're whatever money we have and we collectively use it together, that is what allows us to build businesses. You know, oh, it's hard, I can't do this, or I don't know if I can be it or I can do it. It's like you literally can. If they can, you can. And it's not always easy to do it alone, but it's a thing. Have something to give to the community. What is your service? What is the need? You find that and you place it where you live, because we've got a lot of money to spend. The liquor store is still on the corner. The bodega is still on the corner. Like, it's not like there's no money to be spent there, but it is important for us to create the source of stuff or the need, create the answer to the need. And then the flip side of that is the responsibility of the consumer. And so as Black consumers, we have to wrap our mind around the fact that nobody's going to support us if we don't. We have to go out of our way to support Black businesses, because they can't keep the lights on if we don't support them. They can't, that whole thing about we don't have anything over here for us. Like, how can somebody that's not you put something that is for you in your space? Like, that's what I'm saying. It's your job to do it. Find the thing that we love to do culturally. We're doing this because we want to do it. And yeah, I'm going to have Ludacris playing in the background or Juvenile backing it up for the 99 and 2000s. That's the music we play over here. If that's, or jazz or whatever. But when you come to our space and you come to our thing, our spot, our side of town, instead of us having our neighborhoods fighting with each other, our whole neighborhood is our block. It's our spot, our blank canvas, honestly. The property value is pretty low, so you probably can get good rent in a low income space for a business. Mm-hmm. So, but back to the consumers, that's what I was saying. So our consumers, there's a thing when it comes to money that Black people, and I can't just say Black people. I think that I talk about Black people because I'm Black and I talk about my folks. Mm-hmm. And I know that other people also have this issue and this conditioning, but as it relates to us, the poverty mentality is strickening, like it's suffocating us in one way or another. So for instance, Dr. Claud Anderson, he has a book called Powernomics, which that book and Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu's Black Economics, those 2 books are the books, y'all. Check those out. Anyway, but they both specifically talk about this colder ice thing. And so I guess back, Huh?
Did you say colder ice?
Yes, colder ice. And there was in Dr. Claud Anderson's book, he says that he and a friend of his were sitting and looking across the street at two business. One business was a Black owned business and the other one was non-Black owned. Probably someone else of some other culture in our community having their business as well. And they both sell ice. And so he says that he saw a man literally go to the Black owned business and look at the ice. And then he walks across and goes to the next building and looks at their ice. And he chooses to purchase the other ice. Same price.
Same price.
Same price. It's ice. So Dr. Claud Anderson goes on and says, so he asked him, why did he do that? And he said, I just feel like this ice is just smoother. It's just better, this ice. And subconsciously in our mind, a lot of our minds, we downplay our own value. We don't think that what I've got is good enough. Like, they look like me, something might be wrong with it. It ain't smooth enough. So he says on that day, I learned not only is the white man's ice colder, but it's also smoother. And so we have to find in ourselves, undo those things. So when we talk about breaking generational curses and stuff like that, it's really mostly about the mindset, because we do what we've been taught unconsciously. So children ages 0 to 6, our consciousness is always in download mode. So whatever we see, think, it's just all bringing in. So if I think of myself at 6 years old, what was I told? Well, or even between 6 and 12, you can do 12 or 13, it doesn't matter. But in youth and in childhood, what did I see that verified that there wasn't enough, that this is better than mine? What did I see in the news that taught me that I might just be the guy that sticks up the 7-Eleven every now and then? Like, that might be me because he looks like I do and he's the one that makes it on the news, So that subconscious programming is in all of us. You literally can't live in America and not have had some kind of programming to think that we are not as bomb and as popping as we really, really are. So undoing that and seeing the value in what we do offer or what we do have is a huge responsibility of the consumer. And it is also the responsibility of the entrepreneur or the business owner to ensure that they have quality service, quality products. Their stuff going to be on time. They're not giving there's just some little something over here. The intent is not only to get cash flow reciprocated to you, that I'm here because my community consumers are loyal to me. They know that I need to make sure that I promote Pookie and them because they really trying their best with this lawn care service. Sure. Jose and them might do it for $20 cheaper, but you're going to spend that $20 anyway. We may go in the store. Oh, it's too expensive in here. It's $2 more. You're going to spend that $2.
Let me ask you, Dre Shore,
Mm-hmm.
why do you think African Americans don't look more to invest in the businesses in our community? What do you think are some of the factors?
I think that we don't look to invest in our own communal areas because, well, one thing we could say that maybe we're not always about investing and we might be more of spenders. So our spending habits could be more related to where can I spend my money and get something versus being willing to wait it out for the long haul, or being able to see what could be for my friend, family, Pookie down the street that has this business. What is it that they have that I can believe in and I can support them in? So I think that it's a bit of both of those things, not necessarily having the right spending habits or spending patterns, and then also not necessarily believing in our own selves and our own capabilities.
What about trust and distrust?
Ooh, yes. I think that it's important that we actually learn our real history. And if we learn our history and know all of the tricks and all of the jokes that society has planted within us to make us scurry against each other, or to be just like, oh, I don't know, Willie Lynch syndrome was real, that separation, that feeling, that's a whole thing. And then also when we think of how we're so used to being dependent on the government or white culture, I'd say, or white business owners, because most of us get our checks from somebody that's not black. Somebody that's not black pays our mortgage based off of our work, So we have this thing where we can trust that I'm gonna get my money when I shop with Bob, or when I'm working with Bob. But then it's like, oh, well, Pookie and them hiring and they need, somebody to work in their front office. I don't know. They might not, because, it's ingrained in us, I think. Even if we think of in family, where there's this, our families have been, messed up in a lot of ways.
Say it.
It's been messed up. We've been conditioned to not trust each other, because when you're in a state of survival all the time, when it's like, yo, I gotta pay my damn rent this week, I need to know that my money's gonna be where it's gonna be at. Maybe last time Pookie and them did forget to pay you, they just getting it together. They still new to this, so there's grace that we don't tend to have grace for each other like we have it for other people, like for other establishments. We'll give them grace all day long. We get on planes, and the airplane, it ain't it's 3 hours late, but you still sitting there, you gonna wait. You go in restaurants and they want to seat you by the bathroom. Like, it be stuff. And I try not to be that person that's like, oh, you're not about to play me today. I try not to be her. But when you peep it, you peep it. And it's like, okay, so they the only seats, because I see 5 of the tables. Right. So, there are things where we're sort of used to not giving each other a chance. We're used to being let down also by Black people. That in our community, we've been let down by our own folks a number of times. But I'll tell you, it ain't no number of times compared to the American history that we've got. Like, we deserve to give ourselves a chance every time. We deserve to put grace out there and say, hey, let me just give them another chance. Let me at least tell them how I feel like they could improve. And I think that's a big thing too for us, is to release the ego.
Always the ego. It's like, you don't want to be played. You don't want nobody to say nothing to you, or businesses. I mean, I've tried my best in some cases to, I do events here where we work with businesses to elevate Black businesses and let people know who they are and things like that. And I've literally been told, hung up on, like, well, want nothing to do with that. Hang up. I'm like, well, okay, never mind, So we have to give each other a chance. We give everybody chances. But I think that because we are always our own worst critic, I think that it goes internally as ourselves, but also externally towards our people, that we won't take no shit when it comes from our folks. Our standards and our expectation is just through the roof. It's through the roof. And on that flip side, as the business owner or entrepreneur, sometimes they think because we're the same color that we don't have to
hook them up
like we would treat everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in hookups, by the way.
Right. I mean, and you know what? I can understand how we got there. I get it, because there was a time where we couldn't, shop at certain stores, or we couldn't use certain bathrooms, and we did really, really need somebody to help us out for real, But I think because we've seen that from our parents and our parents' parents, and everybody always kind of looks out for some reason. Well, for that reason, I'd say, without really getting at the core of like why we had to be that way, we think it's just a thing we're supposed to do. Like, nah, I think that in some ways we can work with each other, especially when funds are low. I say on business to business, like if there's a barter system you can do, you scratch my back, I scratch your back, we can all get these customers, we can all get these clients type of thing. But when it comes from consumer to the business owner, we can't, like, how are they going to live? They got to pay two mortgages, rather, a mortgage on their business and a mortgage on their home. And their kids still need school clothes, just like yours.
Not only that, I would like to explain that when companies or businesses open, sometimes their product is more expensive because they just opened.
Exactly.
And they haven't been established. Now, if we keep buying from them and keep
Yes.
the supply, and they keep the supply, prices will then go down.
S1-E9